What if you're asked to repair the damages done by your affluential neighbor, who instead blames you and asks you to pay for the damages and the tools required for the repair work? What would we call it? Hypocrisy or injustice? But that is what exactly happening in today's fight against climate change. The developed world that used fossil fuels indiscriminately over the centuries to advance, triggering climate change, is now asking the developing countries to take onus of healing the climate, while refusing to share the technologies required for it or to pay for it. Here's a report on one of the biggest challenges that the Global South faces today in the fight against global warming.
Scorching heat waves in Europe, wildfires in America, devastating floods in India, Ecuador and Somalia. Countries across the world are witnessing extreme weather events, pointing to a worsening climate crisis. According to a report by the World Economic Forum in January 2024, climate change is projected to cause 14.5 million deaths by 2050, primarily due to floods, droughts, heat waves, tropical storms, wildfires and rising sea levels. But as the world grapples with the urgent need to combat climate change, businesses and governments are turning to green initiatives. These initiatives are part of a new buzz term called green capitalism. But what exactly is green capitalism? Green capitalism, or more formally, eco-capitalism, is an economic system that seeks to combine environmentalism and sustainability into the capitalist framework. It aims to ensure that economic growth does not come at the expense of the planet. The concept gained traction with the publication of influential works like Paul Hawken's The Ecology of Commerce and the adoption of frameworks like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Over the years, the idea evolved that governments and corporations, mostly in the developed nations, pledging to reduce carbon emissions, adopt circular economy practices, and support biodiversity. Companies like Tesla, Patagonia, and Unilever have launched several projects that dabble into the concept of green capitalism. American company Tesla launched its line of electric vehicles with the motto of making sustainable transportation desirable and accessible. Another American clothing company is known for its commitment to environmental activism, using recycled materials and supporting conservation efforts. British company Unilever, with its sustainable living plan, promotes sustainable sourcing and reducing waste. But what has led to the idea of green capitalism? It emerged in the 1960s when calls for environmental action were heightened amidst a volatile state of the world. But who is accountable for this damage? According to World Inequality Database, the affluent countries of the global north are responsible for around half of all emissions since the Industrial Revolution. They produce a carbon footprint 100 times greater than that of the world's poor nations combined. The 2019 report, which documents climate change and the global inequality of carbon emissions from 1990 to 2020, points out that the top 10% of global emitters, which mostly includes advanced economies like Australia, Canada, the European Union, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, United States and United Kingdom, were responsible for about 48% of global CO2 emissions, while the bottom 50 were responsible for almost 12% of all emissions. Even though it does not disregard the contributions of the Global South to the climate crisis, there is evidently less of an equal share in fossil fuel use, including energy consumption. The South disproportionately bears the brunt of environmental degradation, facing severe impacts. Other factors such as rising poverty levels and overexploitation of natural resources and dynamic political environment also puts the Global South countries at a disadvantage. In the contemporary economic scenario, without tight rules and regulations for controlling the players in the green capitalist economies, the concept of green capitalism becomes greenwashing. Environmental marketing firm TerraChoice defines greenwashing as the act of misleading consumers regarding the environmental practices of a company or the environmental benefits of a product or service. According to a 2020 study by the European Commission, 42% of green claims made by companies were found to be exaggerated, false or deceptive. Thus, eco-capitalism seems a far-fetched dream for countries in the Global South. The majorly West-supported action plan, by its very nature, prioritizes profit over the planet and ignores the socio-economic challenges of the Global South. Countries of the Global South, with India at the forefront, have been actively speaking up against this blueprint of mitigating the climate crisis, which holds both the North and the South with equal accountability.
Climate action Two, cannot continue to witness an evasion of historical responsibilities. The power of markets should not be utilized to steer food and energy from the needy to the wealthy. When reality departs from the rhetoric, we must have the courage to call it out. Without genuine solidarity, there can never be real trust. This is very much the sentiment of the Global South.
The challenge still remains. Actors from the Global South need more space to raise their voices. The fight against climate change is necessary, but right now the cost seems too heavy for a developing Global South